16 million school-going students have finally resumed class. There's been a lot of back and forth, but let me bring in Peter Ndoro now. He's the CEO, Kenya Private Schools Association, that is KPSA. The last time we spoke to him in October, about 54,000 students were going to be out of school because 196 schools had been closed down. He's joining me live from Eldoret now. Mr. Ndoro will be speaking to us about the impact that has created and the general conversation that is it time that schools invested in other avenues so that they diversify their revenue streams rather than focusing on school fees. What kind of impact did coronavirus have on the private schools? And how is the value chain going to be? Should the schools now think of buying more buses, employing more drivers to ensure that the students get to school on time and also ensure that the social distancing is done? And does this marginalize further schools even more, considering the infrastructural development that is needed? All right, let's bring in Peter Ndoro now. He's the CEO, Kenya Private Schools Association. Mr. Peter Ndoro, thank you so much for making time for business. Now, let's get straight into it. Last time we spoke, 54,000 learners were going to be out of school. 196 schools were going to be closed. What is your assessment of the coronavirus pandemic on the private schools as we speak?
Thank you very much, Trevor, and thank you for having me on this program.
All right, we apologize for that.
Hello, Trevor, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Ndoro.
Yes, I want to appreciate for having me on studio for this particular program, and say that 2020 has been a very difficult year for private schools across the country. For us, we say that private schools have suffered the most because of this pandemic. Because unlike other sectors, education was closed by the government beginning March up to January today, when the schools are now reopening. And when you look at any other than school fees that is paid for by parents when learners are in session. Therefore, the private sector were badly affected. We were not able to support our programs. We were not able to pay our payrolls. We had to send some of our staff on unpaid leave. We had to reduce some of the pay for some of the critical workers in the institutions that were supposed to continue working, like the gardeners, the security people, and all that. So it has been a very difficult year. For very many private schools that were on rented premises, they were unable to pay their rent, and this made a number of private schools to close. Last time when we spoke, you have indicated we were 196, but now we are at 339 private schools that have reported to us as Kenya Private Schools Association that they have closed with about 56,000 learners. But I want to say that these learners, the 56,000 of them, will not miss an opportunity in any other school. What we have advised our schools is to reorganize themselves to be able to accommodate these learners from the private schools that have already closed. So at the moment, we are not talking about a crisis of vacancy. We in the private sector are going to make considerations because quite a number of us had an opportunity that can be able to accommodate these particular learners. Private schools were hard hit. That is true. We had hoped that the government was to support the private sector by giving us a stimulus package. We appreciate that the government had promised to give private schools a 7 billion stimulus package, which until this point in time has not been able to come. And the government has explained to us that they are facing a financial challenge. And therefore, this will have to be considered as we go along. But at this point in time, we haven't received those funds. The impact of this is that a number of private schools that expected to receive this stimulus package to support setting up of the reopening guidelines were badly affected because they had to go to commercial sources to get credit facilities that are very expensive.
Okay.
This will make education very expensive in the long run.
Mr. Ndoro,
at this point in time, very many investors in private schools are struggling.
There was a stimulus package that was given by the government. Did that help in any way? Have you received it, and what's the delay? Mr. Ndoro? There was a stimulus package that was supposed to be given by the government to private schools. Have you received it? And what's the delay? And will it have much of an impact?
Hello?
Mr. Ndoro, can you hear me? Okay, we seem to be
I'm losing you. I'm not getting you. Are breaking.
Yeah. The issue is this still a very viable investment as we speak? Is education still a viable investment right now?
Yes, it is. It is a very viable investment at this point in time, because private schools will have to transform themselves. Because what COVID has taught us is that it is not just about the brick and mortar. It is not just about the physical school that learning can be able to take place, but there are very many other platforms that private schools can use. At the moment, we are not just looking at setting up and expanding our classrooms. We are looking at how can we transform ourselves to become also virtual schools. We want our institutions, the private schools, and the advisory we are giving them from the Kenya Private Schools Association is that we should be able to consider the digital learning processes. How do we reach out to our learners digitally? How do teachers ensure that they teach even when learners are at home or when teachers themselves are at home? What is it that needs to be done? Because at the moment, we have realized that in as much as in our physical schools, the physical facilities, for example, one class can accommodate 40, but through digital support, one class can accommodate even 100 learners. So we are transforming ourselves in as far as provision of education is concerned. We want to expand, but using the digital platforms. So education for the private sector is still a very, very viable investment, and we are reorganizing ourselves to ensure that we continue expanding access to quality education via the digital platform.
Mr. Ndoro, is it time
for
then?
us as Kenya Private Schools Association, we realized, because when the schools were shut in March of last year, we had no other option or any other way of reaching out to the learners. In fact, even our current laws, the Basic Education Act, does not provide for teaching of learners when they're at home. In fact, it had criminalized. It is illegal for you to carry out tuition when learners are at home. But with COVID, we have learned that we can teach when learners are at home, but using digital platforms. So at this point in time, we are looking at an opportunity for education sector, not just for private schools, but for every other public and private schools, through the use of the digital platforms, so that we can be able to expand our teaching and learning using the digital platforms that we have. So it's an opportunity for private schools at this point in time.
Mr. Ndoro, before I let you go, is it time then that schools started rethinking the school fees model and diversify into other revenue streams?
I'm not getting you, Trevor. You are breaking. Please.
Is it time that we stopped relying on school fees and diversified to other revenue streams?
Hello. If I'm getting you correct, you are asking the issues of diversifying.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Mr. Ndoro, I'm talking about diversification.
In the education sector, what we are doing, we are enhancing the provision of education, the teaching and learning, using the regular curriculum that we have. And at the moment, a majority of our members have not decided to diversify. They have only decided to ensure that they maximize on the opportunities that they have. For example, this morning I visited one of our private schools, and one of the things they said is that going forward, they will not be buying vegetables from the market, but they'll be harvesting vegetables from their own farm. I've looked at some of the institutions that have not been have been buying eggs for their learners, but now they have reared chicken for use and also for commercial purposes, but for the purposes of supporting education. So at this point in time, private schools are looking at how they can enhance the opportunities that they have within them, within their schools, to be able to become even more productive, but to support education in the process.
Well, thanks, Peter. That's Peter Ndoro, is the CEO, Kenya Private Schools Association, that's KPSA, speaking to us about the impact of COVID-19 on schools. He says now the private schools that have closed have since increased. The first time we were speaking to him, there were 196. Now there are 339 that have closed, with 56,000 learners now out of school. But he says that they'll be redeployed to